Hey guys, welcome to another video on the Inside Spurs Show. Happy Wednesday morning to you. I hope you're all right. Hope you are all okay and looking after yourself. In this video, we are going to be talking about a little bit of news surrounding that manager list that we talked about not long ago and a bit of an update on that. A little bit of a chatter surround Rayan Ait-Nouri from Wolves. We're talking a little bit about the game, obviously, tomorrow now. We're on the eve of the game tomorrow, as well as the rearrangement with Aston Villa and the fallout from that decision. So a bit more of an in-depth discussion about a few things this morning. It's still morning, and I'm looking forward to it. And obviously, yesterday's game was it's just bonkers how good that tie was between Inter and Barca. Obviously, the other semi-final is tonight with PSG and Arsenal going at it. And then obviously after that game is out of the way, if you've been around watching these sort of videos for a little while, once the Wednesday games are out of the way, it's very much like, right, we're up. It's like it's your turn at swinging the bat. It's your turn at the plate, as they would say in baseball. So, yeah, looking forward to it very, very muchly. What I'll do is I'll start with the manager chat because let's give you a quick backstory if you've missed it. Obviously, there was chatter surrounding Thomas Frank. There's chatter around Marco Silva, Xavi for a bit as well. Andoni Iraola, you name it. There was chatter around them. Good morning, Sonia Spurs, Marshall, Bob Bazza, Kieran. How are we all? That was sort of the updated list. I think, by the sounds of things, Iraola is going to be staying at Bournemouth. So, let's not through pen, but in pencil, just sort of cross that one out. And then obviously you're working with that. Now, obviously that won't be the full list. There'll still be the odd one or two names that will appear through time. It's like transfer targets. They appear through time. So, excuse me. Let's start with this first one, though, because it is around Marco Silva, and it came from Nicola Shearer this morning, who elaborated on something about 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, it said that Al Hilal have shown an interest in Fulham's manager Marco Silva as a potential new coach for next season. Now, Al Hilal, I think, got rid of their manager in the last few days. Couldn't tell you who it is that was the manager, but yeah. He has updated it this morning to say talks in progress for Marco Silva to Al Hilal as new manager from June. Silva's contract with Fulham expires in 2026, but the Saudi club are working to reach an agreement. Now, fascinating on that side of things. Now, I say this as not to say that, I would or wouldn't want Marco Silva. This is just, it gives me a bit of a vibe surrounding the summer that we got Nuno. And this isn't a slight at Nuno, by the way. Obviously, our number one target was Conte that summer. Now, ironically, we got Conte, obviously, a little while afterwards, right? But that was the guy that we wanted that summer. We spent a large part of that summer trying to convince him to join. He didn't. There was Fonseca, there was Gattuso, there was all sorts of managers we were linked to. And then, obviously, we then went with Nuno. Iraola, let's say, is staying at Bournemouth. Let's say Marco Silva is obviously going to go to Saudi, which obviously, hey, crazy good money, and I don't begrudge. I'm a bit weird. I don't begrudge people doing things for money in life. I don't. I understand it. You only got one time around at this thing. And, if he works in Saudi for a few years, he probably retires a very rich man, a very happy man, and he just sips on cocktails on the beach for the rest of his life, and it's pretty casual, With 1 year left on his contract, it is obviously a part where it's now or never that if Fulham extend him or he goes. Now, Fulham obviously get some compensation as well. What they would do for another next manager is interesting. I don't truly know. It would scream McKenna. I don't know, actually thinking about it, Fulham, if they were to move off of Silva, it just feels like Kieran McKenna from Ipswich would be the play there. But for us, there's a situation where Iraola is off the list. Marco Silva's off the list. You start to look at it and go, well, there's Thomas Frank. Xavi, you could still say, is on that list. And I think the other thing, I'm not saying Ange's gone, by the way, because no one actually knows that. I know some people, you may want that or you may not want that, but we don't know. Tomorrow is the key thing. And, I'm only bringing this in as an update to that list. I'm not saying that any of these managers will be the next Spurs manager. It still could be Ange. You never know. But, that list is starting to dwindle, which is not always a bad thing. It's not to say, by the way, that either of those guys were the number one target. Again, nobody truly knows. It can change very quickly. I think there's pros and cons to them all. We went through the list of the pros and cons to them all. And a good quality manager is, in my opinion, someone that comes with flaws. And we just need to be aware of that, and don't jump down managers' throats and lambast them every other second like Spurs fans do on Twitter, and it's just a bit boring, to be honest. Even it's like when it's like international break, they're still slagging off the team, and it's like, oh Jesus Christ, lads, give it a rest. Just give it a rest for a couple of days. Steve, Don, and Milton, how are we? So look, I'm thinking more so with the idea of, look, if those two are off the list, you're working with Frank, you're working with Xavi. Now, the interesting thing with this summer is Vinay's coming in, obviously, to start steering the ship in a competent way, you're hoping. Obviously, he's got a bit of a track record of competency. Is Fabio Paratici coming back? Because if Fabio Paratici comes back, he's going to have a say in the next manager. And maybe he goes, oh, Thomas Frank, I do not want Thomas Frank. He's not my guy. I love Xavi. Then obviously Xavi then maybe gets bumped up the list. Then there might be other people in that decision making that go, actually, Thomas Frank is a kind of guy that we do like. He's Prem proven. He works within budgets and things like that, and they might go that route. So I think there's a lot of question marks this summer, and I think people kind of go, get the right manager, and it's all done. There's a lot of things that need to take place for the right manager. You don't bring in a manager and then fix the things above them. You fix the things above them to get them in place, ready for the manager. You don't want the manager coming in and going, right, so I'm doing the chief exec's job, I'm doing the technical director's job, I'm doing my job, and I'm doing the first, it's like, there's all those things that go into it. For me, is irrelevant right now. I think Thomas Frank probably is the top of the list. If they were to move off of Ange, again, we do not know. I think Thomas Frank is top of that list. It's just my hunch. It's just a punt into the dark. We'll see, but that can change very, very quickly. Obviously, we're on the eve of a huge game with Bodo Glimt, which I'm just going to segue really nicely into Bodo Glimt like that. I've seen some pictures and videos from some of the journalists who are out in Norway. Looks a lovely little area. Looks a nice little place. The stadium actually looks quite nice. It's weird. Obviously, we're so accustomed to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So if you just kind of remove that from your brain and realize that is an anomaly, that's not a normal thing in football to have a stadium like that. If you just bring it back a level to kind of like where we were with White Hart Lane, you look at Bodo Glimt Stadium and go, actually, that's not too bad. That's all right. That's quite nice. And that's kind of why I look at it. It looks very open, if you know what I mean. Like if you actually look at it, it looks very open, the stadium. Obviously, weather-wise, I'm not going to give you a weather report until I might look at it tomorrow. I'm not looking at it today. I don't really care. There's not a green screen behind me that's going to go, oh, it's sunny in London. Oh, if you look towards Norfolk, it's going to be cloudy with the chance of rain. Doing all this with a green screen, even though there's nothing on the screen behind me. I'm not going to do that. But regardless, okay, there is a 4G pitch. If you don't know, there's a bit of a 4G pitch question mark surrounding this game. I've got a couple of views on this because I haven't really talked about it that much. People go, well, we've got experience. We played against Tamworth. No offense to Tamworth. Let's not compare them with Bodo Glimt away in a European semi-final. It's not fair on Bodo Glimt, okay? Also, with that Tamworth game, look at the players that played. How many are going to play on tomorrow night? 2, 3 of them, maybe? The rest of them are either on the bench or not even in the squad, e.g. Timo Werner. So for me, it's like, I'm not really taking much from that side of things. And it works both ways, double-edged sword. I'm not taking much from that game in terms of we didn't play very well, yes, okay, you should have been better than you were because obviously you've got players out there that are international footballers. When you are making 8 or 9 changes, the team is a bit disjointed. The team is a bit all over the place at times. You know, you see it when Spurs have been playing in Europe recently, where for the most part that is a regular 11 for the most part, barring a couple of changes here and there. The actual quality of football is a little bit smoother. It's a little better. We play better. Again, you know, yes, we drew at Frankfurt in the first leg. We battered the hell out of them. We should have won by multiple. In the second leg, we kept a clean sheet away to Frankfurt. Teams don't normally do that. Even teams in their own German league don't do that at Frankfurt. We go there and win 1-0. I mean, the first leg against Bodo Glimt could have knocked them for about 10. So, you know, when we are in the Europa League, this is why I kind of say to people, don't take too much in terms of the league form into the Europa, because in reality, it's like 2 different sides playing a game of football. I mean, I'm playing right wing at times for Spurs when we're in the Premier League. You don't notice it. It's because I pulled my hamstring in the warm-ups, but that's neither here nor there. And that's definitely Ange's fault that I pulled my hamstring in the warm-up. It's not my fault for being a large human being. But in reality, that's why I don't really go, look at that. I more so look at the form that we take into the Europa League games from the other Europa League games. You know, we were obviously getting a good result in Frankfurt, good result in the first leg. We you know, played brilliantly against FC Twente in the second leg. First leg wasn't great. Second leg was, you know, we were good against Frankfurt in the first leg. So we have been good in the Europa this season, hence why I kind of take more stock from that. So, yes, while the pitch is maybe a little abnormal, absolutely, you are also still playing on a football pitch. Okay, maybe you're not going to be sliding in and around and all those things. I get that. But you're still playing on a football pitch. And correct me if I'm wrong, you are still a footballer. You know, it works both ways, because you think of Bodo Glimt playing on grass. It's like, well, they're professional footballers. They're playing on a football pitch. Get on with it. Okay, maybe it's not exactly the same as you normally do it, but you know, there's a few things that I think people are over egging, and I think there's a few people that are underestimating certain things. It's not going to be exactly the same. Sometimes maybe the pitch might be a little quicker. They water the pitch, obviously, but at the same time, ball to feet, okay, just get on with it. It's the same thing. So, you know, when you've got international footballers like Vicario and you've got Destiny Doggy, which, by the way, watching Inter last night, how DeMarco ever starts ahead of Destiny Doggy in the international setup. So, unless it's just because they play a back 7 and they need a left winger to create, that's the only way DeMarco starts ahead of Destiny Doggy. I watched DeMarco, and I've been watching him a little bit recently, just get ruined by wingers defensively. And how he didn't get booked yesterday, by the way, he just kicked lumps out of Yamal for about 45, 50 minutes. Yeah, Destiny should be starting for Italy ahead of him personally, but that's a side note to it all. For me, it's just you've got Mickey and Kuti and Porro and Bentancur, you know, Bissouma, you know, Mali international, you know, what they're going to do in midfield is a good question, but Kulusevski, you know, he plays quite centrally for Sweden at times, you know, so it works there. You know, you think of Brennan Johnson, Welsh international. I mean, Solanke's a newbie to the international scene with England, but, you know, Richarlison. So there's plenty of international footballers out there that know they need to do their jobs. And I think they will. I do think they will. Like I've said, I think we score. They're going to need to score 3. I don't see them scoring 3. So there you go. In terms of footwear for 4G, not as, you don't need as deep as studs, for example, but blades, molds, boots, they still work on those sort of things. Andy out. Oh, yeah, I'd sack me in a heartbeat. No, Inzaghi is very much staying at Inter Milan. Very much starting at Inter Milan. Hey, mate, we got GTA 6 trailer to who cares about Spurs? The GTA 6 trailer, I'm going to be real, was crap. There's nothing in that trailer that gets me more excited for GTA. It just doesn't. And the reason I say that is, oh, look, there's more bubbles in a beer. Oh, look, that person's got a few more drops of sweat that look a bit more real. FIFA do it. NBA 2K does it. Everyone does it. It doesn't really affect the gameplay for me. So, you know what I mean? I'm excited for GTA. I'm not denying that. But also at the same point, it's like, did we learn anything from this? No. Flick blaming the refs' heritage. We will be there. I tell you what, Barca play a lot of ange ball, but they also don't have. That's kind of their issue. Mickey and Cuti Romero, if you had them two at centre back for Barca, they probably would have won that game, won that tie with ease. Because the amount of time they play a high line and it's like, oh, they're through. It's like, yeah, well, you got the world's quickest defender at centre back. It'd help, wouldn't it? So they need to sort out their centre back part area, Barca. Because anyone that can, play a ball over the top seems to have a lot of success with them. So, and they do with us when Mickey van der Ven doesn't play. So there you go. But anyway, we're moving on. We're going to talk Aston Villa. There's a debacle surrounding this fixture change. So to give you an idea, with Aston Villa, I just want to give you the exact date. I don't want to get this wrong. Okay. Aston Villa. Right. So they were meant to play us on the 18th of May, which is the Sunday, which if we were to get to the Europa League final, that is the Sunday before the Europa League final. Europa League final obviously being on the Thursday, whatever the date would be on that. I don't know. Okay. And they've moved it 2 days forward because Manchester United are playing on the Friday. If they're in the final as well, it would give Manchester United 2 days increased recovery on us, obviously getting an unfair advantage. And Aston Villa fans are very unhappy. And I feel for the fans that are going to the game. First and foremost, I'm going to put it out there. I feel for the fans that are going to the game who had planned for the Sunday, planned travel or hotels or whatever that it is. They've planned, even like they're going to get food that day at a restaurant, whatever, or booking of tables of bars. They've planned that day. This should have been dealt with a little while ago. We played the first leg on the 1st of May. It should have been done and dealt with before then. And I see Aston Villa fans very upset. And again, if you're going to the game, I understand it. The one thing I would say to those Aston Villa fans is, lads, if we're in the final, we're not playing a first team. You will win that game. If you don't win that game, it's on you for bottling it, basically, okay? That first 11 that is going to play what would be the final will not touch that pitch unless it's vital they have to touch that pitch. You won't see Mickey van der Ven. You won't see Christian Romero. You won't see Pedro Porro. You won't see Destiny Udogie. You shouldn't see Bentancur. I would actually argue the midfield room is so important now. You shouldn't see a Kulusevski. You shouldn't see a Bentancur. You'll win that game. You'll enjoy your weekend more because you've won on the Friday night and then you can cruise into the weekend, watch the rest of the football. Obviously they're in a situation with Champions League football. They can start to watch other teams and root against other teams depending on what it is. Obviously, you get the whole big cartel. The Cartel 6 decide what is going on. I saw so many Aston Villa fans going, it's the FA's fault. And it's like, it's the Premier League, lads. It's not the FA. So be angry, but get it right first and foremost. It's not the cartel. It's not the big six making the decision. If Aston, the people were complaining, like, well, we didn't get us in the quarterfinal. It's like, yeah, it's quarterfinal. You go to the semi-final. In the quarterfinal, there's still a lot of teams left. In the semi-final, that's going to the final. So I don't really get that argument. It's kind of a really irrelevant argument. And then obviously now they're supporting Bodo Glimt or they're supporting Manchester United for it. It's like, okay, weird one. But in reality, other than the people that have planned their day, who I feel for, and I do still feel for them, this should still suit Villa beautifully. Because if I'm looking at the fixtures, right, they play on the Saturday, the 10th of May, away at Bournemouth, right? They then play us on the following Friday. So, you're still getting plenty of time of rest. And then you finish off with Manchester United away on the last game of the season, which you're now going to get more rest. You get 9 days of rest going into that game, whilst Man United, potentially playing in a European final, will have played that game. You'll beat Manchester United at Old Trafford if they're out tomorrow night. If they go out tomorrow night, then maybe you won't. But if they go through, the players are going to be knackered. You know, they might even win the European final, and you know they're going to be on the sesh and they're going to be enjoying themselves. You'll slap them for about 4 or 5 at the Old Trafford. Again, if you don't win that game, it's on you, not on the Premier League. You know, this should suit them, in my opinion. This should suit them because if we go through, they're going to play a really, really rotated Spurs side, right? Who they should beat easily by multiple. You're then going to get 9 days rest going into your last game of the season against a team that might be playing in that midweek in Europe. For me, it makes a ton of sense because you'll win both those games, in my opinion. Bournemouth away at the weekend, obviously, you've got to go and do a job there. But when you look at some of the fixtures, like Forest's fixtures going into the last few, obviously, I know they've got home to Leicester, away to West Ham, and home to Chelsea. Let's say they get 2 wins there. What happens there? You know, Newcastle, home to Chelsea, away to Arsenal, and then home to Everton. You know, there's an opportunity for Villa to get into those Champions League spots. So again, obviously, I know they'll try and, you know, make it all about it's all Spurs' fault and all those sort of things. Trust me, if it works the other way, and we were playing Liverpool in a European, they're playing European semi-final football. This is what the leagues should do, in my opinion. They should do this for all teams, and this isn't a Spurs-based and biased agenda. If this is what other leagues do. I mean, Bodo Glimt have not played since we played them. Okay, they've had a week's rest. Okay, teams and leagues should do this to favour their teams in European competitions because if they do well, it benefits the league, and also if they were to win it, it will allow another team to get into Europe, which will help the league even more. That's what they should be doing. So if it worked the other way around, I would totally understand Villa getting their game adjusted and, they play on the Friday, fine, whatever. I completely understand it. Even if we switched the exact positions and we were sitting there fighting for Champions League and they're in a European semi-final and they're down in 16th or whatever, totally get it. I would understand it. So, again, it's not Villa against the world. Nobody's thinking that. Other than for the fans who are having to travel and make things to that nature, especially because it's a Friday night game, that's not exactly an easy journey for some people, especially if you've got to work that day. In reality, this just makes a lot of sense. And Villa are going to beat us anyway. The way I look at it is, hey, imagine you beat us on the Friday night. You've got Saturday and Sunday to enjoy your weekend knowing, hey, we did our job. Now we've just got to root for a couple of other teams and maybe give us a bit of help. And we've got a great weekend. You'll beat Manchester United. You've got 9 days rest as well. So yeah, I don't see why there's a big deal. That's the way I sum it up. Boris, how are you, mate? Oscar Piastri. Yeah, he's cooking at the moment, isn't he? Big D, Martin, how are we both? Yeah, the Liga do it. Like I said, most leagues with any form of IQ will make adjustments to help their teams when it comes to Europe. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong. If we were playing Manchester United in the semi-final, right? I mean, you don't need to benefit anyone. You just keep it the same. There's no need to. If the league wouldn't feel obliged to. But imagine the way it looks if you were Aston Villa, right? Let's say you're Aston Villa. You're in the European semi-final. Man United on the other side. Man United should get their job done. If they bottle it from 3-0 up at home to Bilbao, who potentially are out with, they're going to be without 2 or 3 of their best players. That's a problem. Okay, that's a worrying problem. But let's say they get through. The Spurs are going to play on the Sunday like they've been sort of scheduled to, and we get through in the Europa League. So Manchester United are going to get two extra days, right? But let's say instead of us, it's Villa. Villa fans would be fuming that Manchester United got 2 days extra rest and they don't. So all I'm saying is when it comes to being angry about these things, if you stuck yourself in the shoes of those fans and say it was your club in that situation, you would want the game changed and you would get given the game changed. Unless you're pushing Manchester United game back to Sunday. That's the only other reason you could do it. So there was always going to be someone that was going to be upset about it. But if you actually just stick your feet in the shoes of the situation, understand the situation as it is, you'd go, it makes a ton of sense. Obviously, feel sorry for the people having to travel, but it makes a ton of sense. You know, that's where I look at it. You know, again, anything other than a semi-final, look, trust me, the way I look at it is the Premier League wouldn't change it if Bilbao were going to go through to the final. They wouldn't change it. But it's two Premier League sides, one of which would have an extra 2 days rest. Do you think that's right? No, it's not right. Again, that's that. Anyway, talking about a player who Spurs have had interest in the past in Rayan Ait-Nouri. Supposedly so. Obviously, Spurs had a bid rejected for him. I think it was last summer or the summer before. It's one of the two of those. Manchester City have registered an interest in Rayan Ait-Nouri. Now, obviously, Manchester City have an interest in Destiny Udogie. We know that. That's been announced. They have an interest in Destiny. But obviously, Destiny has like 5 years or 4 years left on his contract. I can't remember exactly. He's got multiple years left. He's going nowhere this summer. You know, I think Destiny's had an up and down year. I think he has struggled, obviously, coming into this season from that massive quad surgery, not having preseason, not having the time to get up to speed. Obviously, our own fans think that, because he's had his surgery, he's been back in training for 30 minutes, he should be absolutely fine to play 100% again. Again, those fans are deluded and not really with the programme, if you know what I mean. These Europa League ties with Frankfurt and the first leg with Bodo Glimt really showed us, there he is. That's the Destiny Udogie that we all know is a phenomenal fullback. You know, I get that people like Jed Spence. I do get that. When everyone's playing at 100%, the two fullbacks that have been playing in the Europa League recently are the best two fullbacks. I'll say it there and then. You know, Pedro Porro was magnificent. Actually, he was magnificent in the Frankfurt ties. You know, the first thing is Bodo Glimt, he was brilliant. Destiny Udogie, again, he could say in the Frankfurt ties, he was the player of the tie. He was great in the first leg against Bodo Glimt last week. He was magnificent. And it's because, you know, at the end of the day, Jed Spence is a good fullback as well. I'm not denying it. I'm not poo-pooing him as a player. I think he's a good fullback. But also you have a point where these two guys who have chemistry with Bentancur, they have chemistry, you know, with Mickey and Kuti and Vic and even Basuma, you know, they have a chemistry with them. And I think, you know, you're starting to see a little bit of a chemistry forming. You know, you saw Destiny and Richie. They haven't really probably played together that much on the left-hand side. It looked like it worked well. Him and Tell have a good relationship. It's just easy and everyone knows everyone's game, right? And when we were very, very good, that was the back four. I mean, this guy's out of form and that guy's out of form. Yeah, I mean, if you're having to play against if you're having to play alongside a different centre-back pairing every other week or every other game, you can't really build that momentum. We have the two main lads back, and you've seen Porro and Destiny's performances take off again. I mean, I've said all along, and it's been a key thing for me. Watch Destiny Udogie when Mickey van der Ven's playing alongside him, because the ball goes over top of Destiny Udogie. He's like, oh, okay. Big whoop. I'm probably athletic enough to get back at you anyway, but why don't I just send the quickest defender in the world over to have a conversation with you? So he can press, and you see him. He presses very high up the pitch, knowing that Dutch absolute alien sitting behind me. I think we'll be all right if the ball goes over the top. Oh, you put the ball over the top, have you? Ooh, don't do that to Mickey van der Ven. He's not that quick. So he has improved immensely because of that. So with Ait-Nouri, I think they've probably got a chance to sign him. I think Wolves are in for an interesting summer this summer. Obviously, form-wise, under the new manager, I say new manager, he's been there for half a season now, but you know what I mean? The newest manager of Wolves, they turn around. They've been one of the more informed teams in the Premier League since his arrival. You know, Cunha looks like he's going to be sold. It looks like Manchester United will be that team that he goes to. There's loads of noise surrounding that. But also, we'll also be fair with this. Ait-Nouri, you know, I don't know how many years, actually. That's a good point. Let's have a quick look. Ait-Nouri. Let's have a look how many years he's left on his contract. He's got 1 year left with a club option for an extra year. So he's got 2 years left, right? He's got 2 years left. Again, whenever I talked about Romero, if you're going to sell him, this is going to be the summer that you're going to make all your money possible. Would Wolves do it? And how much would they get? I think they'd get good money for him. I really do. You know, every time I watch Ait-Nouri, I go, oh, that's a player. That is a player and a half. And look, if we were to get him, I would be happy as Larry to have Ait-Nouri. You know, what? Yeah, I don't think that means, you know, Desi Adoggy sold. And by the way, we still need a left back. I will continue to repeat that. Ever since Ange got here, we needed another left back. Sergio Reguilon was never that left back. We still need a left back. Could you do Ait-Nouri and Desi Adoggy's left back partnership in terms of, you know, you rotate a little bit? I don't think so. If you could, I think you might have the best fullbacks in the league potentially as a tandem of 4. You know, I'm not saying on paper they're the best fullback pairing, but you know, for me, I don't know. But excuse me, yeah, I think Manchester City and Ait-Nouri makes a ton of sense. It really, really does. Obviously, they don't have an out and out left back, really, do they? Because Gavardio is a centre back who's playing left back. Ake is a centre back who's playing left back. O'Reilly, who seems to be playing quite well there, he's a central midfielder. And I know Pep likes taking a central midfielder and playing him in full back, or he gets a full back and he plays them in midfield. You know, see Alaba, see Kimmich, see Lahm, you know, all of them. Yeah, there's so many more, I probably would say. I mean, look at Matthias Nunez who's playing right back. It's like, it's all those things. So he would make a ton of sense. He would be brilliant at Manchester City. That's why I don't see Spurs coming back in there. I think with a lot of deals that Spurs have been trying to do recently, Mark Guay being another one in January, was try and get them now because you want them in the summer. Because in the summer, their market in terms of other buying clubs will increase. That in turn will increase his wages and increase his transfer fee. It's an auction. If you've got an auction, you're bidding against other teams, it goes up and up and up. You know, that's why Spurs wanted Mark Guay in January, which I think shocked everyone, including Mark Guay and his team in Crystal Palace, going, they put a bid in, a formal one. News to us. So, yeah, I think you know, that's probably why we wanted to. He would have been brilliant alongside having, you know, can you imagine Desi Adoggy not having 3 times a week, so you had another left back for a little while? He'd be fit for most of this season potentially. And you got Ait-Nouri. The drop off isn't really there. I think Ait-Nouri is one of the best fullbacks in the league. You know, people talk about Kirkes down at Bournemouth. Ait-Nouri is another one. I think Destiny's another one. I still look at Gavardio as a centre back weirdly. I think recently with City moving him into centre back, they've improved. Obviously, I know they might move on from Stones, and we'll see what happens with Ake and players like that. But you know, O'Reilly's been good there at left back. I do kind of think there's a lot of us doing a lot of left back shopping in the summer. I hope Spurs finally decide to go into that market and grab someone, because they do need someone. You know, we talked about Patrick Dorgu for a long time, and I was like, yeah, he's a bit like Destiny Doggy. That could be quite a good one. He's obviously at Manchester United now. You know, we talked about Bradley Locko, but then he had a massive injury, so that was ruled out. So they've been linked, but they've just not pulled the trigger on that role, that position. Hopefully they do this summer, because we definitely need to. Hope PSG win Champions League. Got $200 on the 8-1. Oh, Milton, get in there. I think you might be okay there, Milton, if I'm honest. I think they do get through tonight. And I look at Inter. I look at what Barca did to them with the defensive frailties. And there are defensive frailties in that Inter team. PSG's attacking, you know, the wingers like Kvara and Desiree Doué, you know, Bradley Barcola. You just think those are some players there. And, I've not even mentioned their best player this season, Ousmane Dembele, who, that finish in the first leg against Arsenal was magnificent. And I think they'd give into so many issues. You think of their midfield three as well. They're quite compact. They're quite solid. João Neves, Fabian, Vitinha. Zaire Emery was obviously playing a little bit of midfield as well. But, defensively, Hakimi, Núñez, Marquinhos, Pacho. Some players there, isn't there? There's some players. Fabian was one of Spain's best players in last international tournament. So, yeah, I think it'd be all right. I think they would beat Inter in the final as well. I know Inter maybe have a bit more in the short-term history of being in the final, but I think PSG would do them, to be honest. I really do. So I'm with you there, Milton. Drinks on you, mate. But yeah, let's see. But look, I'm really looking forward to the game tomorrow. I really am. I'm not really thinking about it too much right this second. Like I said, I always get through the Wednesday Champions League games. And once they're out of the way, no matter who was in them, I'm not saying it's just because it's Arsenal tonight, but like last week it was Inter Barca. Once that game gets out of the way, then it's like, right, attention turn in. Focus is now on this game. Us and Bodo Glimt and Manchester United and Bilbao, we're up next. We're up next to the plate. Baseball bat in hand. I'm buzzing for it. I cannot wait. Look, thank you so much for joining me this morning, this afternoon. Obviously for Milton and Steve and my other Australian friends, go to bed. It's late, all right? It's late at night. Kick your feet up, get to bed, all right? But thank you all so much for joining me anyway, regardless of that. Go and enjoy the rest of the mornings, your afternoons, your evenings, wherever you are in the world. And I'll speak to you all tomorrow to give my last-minute thoughts ahead of Spurs versus Bodo Glimt. Take care, everyone. Peace.